At least let the dead alone. A funny thing about our last discussion is that not only do we see animate objects as people, but we do so for lifeless bodies as well. Our mind cannot even see the corpses of the dead as they really are. It sees a corpse as if the person is still in there. It seems natural for us to see the body, at least after death, as a lifeless piece of flesh. But we know it is not so. We see a person even when we are looking at his or her corpse. For instance, if the facial muscles of the corpse give the impression of a frown, a smile, or pain, we feel that it is the person who is still frowning or smiling or in pain. It is difficult for the mind to accept that the person is not there, so that the impression left on the face is the result of muscular expansion or contraction of some flesh on some bones. The mind cannot see the flesh, but insists on seeing a person. We can see another example of this when we notice that the fingers of the corpse are clenched and feel that it is the person who has made a fist. But is what the mind feels real, or are the fingers merely some bones positioned in a specific way? We do not leave the person alone, even now that he or she is dead. He is gone. Let him be. But what is the reason for this habitual resistance? At least, now that the person is dead, he should not be seen in this light. But why do we still see him there? As discussed earlier, this self-made he is in the mind of the beholder, and has always been there. Therefore, it should not surprise us that this he is still alive in the mind of the beholder, who has habitually attached this mentally self-made he as a tag to that fleshy face. Actually, the beholder's mind is not committing a new mistake, but repeating its original one. The mind cannot conceive of death in that face. The living being that the beholder's mind sees in that face has been present and living only in the mental space of the beholder. Therefore, it is natural that the death of that living body should have no special effect on how the mind views it. There is no one on the street. Go to a place where people are moving around. Observe the scene carefully and describe what you see. What is the most exact answer you can give? The most common answer is that there are persons who are walking around. But is that really the right answer? What is the clearest, most accurate, and simplest answer to this question? The truth is that you do not see anyone there. You only see the bodies, the moving bodies that move around and make sounds. There are bodies there, but there is nobody there. There, you see the body, but not anybody. In reality, there is absolute silence there. It is your mind that is making all these noises. I am not talking about literal noise and silence, but simply suggesting that no one is out there. At least, what you see are not people. What you see there, what your visual system sees, are wandering skeletons, robots made of bones covered with flesh. That is all. You know very well that there is nothing more to it. The rest is all in your mind. Those persons have all been created in that unknown space of the mind we discussed earlier. The scene we are looking at, the street we are walking on, is empty of people. What a scene! What a silence! By saying this, I do not mean that there are no human beings in the world, but I also don't want to say that there are human beings in the world. These issues are not my concern at the moment. What I am highlighting now is that whether or not the existence of human beings and their personal identities are real or merely illusions, our conclusions remain the same. In many mystical and self-knowledge systems, the self is considered to be an illusion. There are also other thought systems with different views. However, for the purposes of this discussion, it does not make any difference in which system of thought you do or do not believe. For example, it does not make a difference whether or not you believe in the existence of life after death. The conclusions of this discussion are independent of any of these presuppositions and precede all of them. No matter what system of thought you follow, you cannot ignore the simple and basic fact that what you see on the street are not people but bodies. This is a logically grounded statement that goes beyond any philosophical view about the definition of the essence of mankind. Whether or not you believe the ego exists, whether or not you believe that ghosts exist, whether or not the ego resides in the brain, whether or not the self is the same as the soul, whether or not you believe in a metaphysical world, or whatever else you may or may not believe, makes no difference to the fact that what your eyes see on the street is only the march of bodies, of figures, of piles of flesh and bones. All those people we refer to as our colleagues, friends, acquaintances, and even us are the same sort of flesh. Can you feel the mere fleshness of this flesh? Consider your parents, siblings, friends, colleagues, managers, bus drivers, and anyone else around you in the same way. More importantly, think about yourself in this light. Put yourself in the place of these people and look at yourself from their point of view. Assume that they have read this book and are practicing this exercise about you. Try to look at your body and personal identity through their eyes. Returning to the 0 point. If we believe in the existence of entities such as myself, my sister, or my mother, we should seek them somewhere else other than their bodies. She, if she really does exist, is something else, resides somewhere else, and should be conceived in another manner. The discourse about the nature and definition of the self has been around for a long time. Various thought systems have emerged based on the answers they have offered to the question of self. But perhaps the one thing they all have in common is their attempt to define the self, which has raised ongoing arguments among their supporters. But let us leave all the presuppositions aside and go further back to the 0 point. Instead of finding the answer to the question, what is a human, we must first find out what a human is not and what it cannot be. One by one, we should omit the entities suggested by any thought system to see what remains in the end. As is the case for any true and genuine research or discovery, the most important priority in this study must be to eliminate incorrect presuppositions and premises. For thousands of years, the human mind has become used to mistaking the body for the person, but now it is time to break that old habit and see the body, as it is. Having gotten used to mistaking the eyes for the person, the mind now wants to see that the eyeballs are merely a bit of flesh. That is what they really are. The mind has become accustomed to considering the movement of the eyeballs as a person looking in different directions, but it is time to see this as it really is, as the movements of a black or blue or brown or green spot in a ball of fat. We are constantly watching a horde of moving flesh and bone robots, similar to the ones we see in sci-fi movies. Of course, some of these robots might be our friends and relatives, and we ourselves are one of the robots as well. You might be a salesman, a student, an engineer, or a philosopher. But despite all the complex thoughts you may or may not have had, can you deny that your mind suffers from an odd illusion? An illusion that is above all other illusions? A spell that is above all other spells? An enchantment more amazing than any other? Confusing a body with a person is not a trivial mistake. Correcting this mind-made delusion will fundamentally change everything in your view of life. It is not an exaggeration to claim that rectifying this error is prior to any other psychological or self-knowledge discussion. This delusion is mankind's deepest dream, so waking up from it should precede any other awakening. By awakening, I mean a sensing and feeling rather than an intellectual realizing of the issue, because a mere logical understanding will not have the destructive effect it should have on the mind's current flawed structure. However, as mentioned earlier, and as you have probably figured out by now, making the mind realize this logic is not easy, for several reasons. The fact that the mind has to wake up from this hypnotic dream and destroy a deeply rooted habit is not the only problem. The main issue is that the mind suffers from an immense fear and anxiety as soon as it tries to apply this logic. The mind is terrified of this way of looking, to the point that it regards it as its own death. Of course, our devious mind is right and discerns the issue correctly. This fear is really justified. One reason behind this fear is the reluctance to face a dreadful loneliness. The mind suddenly realizes that everything it has encountered in life, which has aroused different feelings, including anger, hatred, fear, jealousy, and love, not only has no external existence, but never existed in the first place. It is as if all the people you have met in life were figures in a painting, figures that you mistook for real. Even more frightening is that your mind has to accept the same fact about itself. It has to realize that it has mistaken a pile of flesh for itself. There are also other important causes of this fear and resistance. For example, I need to keep the images of the people around me as they are in order to be able to release my accumulated hate and anger toward them. I can't just let them go, disappear, vanish, to be forgotten or forgiven. As disgusting as they are, I need them to stay in my mind in order to take my revenge against them sometime in the future. Otherwise, against what can I release this much hate and anger that I am carrying on my shoulders? It is not easy to accept that these despicable identities are the creators of my own mind. It is hard to separate them from their bodies, to see those bodies only as bodies, as they are. This is an extremely important topic, to which I intend to return at another time and place. However, you really don't need me to explain this to you. You will soon discover this unpleasant, shocking truth by yourself as soon as you start a genuine effort to see the bodies as they are.